All right, hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom and George. We got a lot to go through. The Supreme Court did some big stuff today. We got GDP numbers. We got CPE numbers. We have some of the Bitcoin miners moving. We had a weird day in the market, in my opinion. A lot to go through. Welcome everybody. If you can do us a favor and smash the like button. We're going to start right out. We're going for 100 likes. Help us. It is appreciated. George.
Oh, man, I got to be on. Hey, everyone. How's everybody doing? Hopefully well. I think that everybody's missing something on the Bitcoin chart. Tom's going to get into it. There's an opportunity here. I think it's going to go nuts, and I'm still a firm believer in XRP.
George is bullish on Bitcoin. For those of you who have been here, you know that George is heavy into XRP. I got in later than he did, but I'm in as well.
Yeah, but on my one account, wow, that's all I can say, guys. Not good in a good way either, a bad way.
While it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The question is, where's it all going to end up? And I think we're going to look at some charts today. We're going to look at some technicals today. We're going to look at what people are saying. There's a lot of gloom and doom. We're going to look at the fear and greed index. I think that's telling us a lot right now. So let's start with, and we will get to, you can put your guess in the chat. I did make purchases today, so I'll review what I did last week as well. There was, I think may have been a couple of weeks ago now, on the 5th of February, I think, in my opinion, that was the bottom. Time will tell. We'll see what happens, but I made some big moves on that day. I haven't done anything since, and then an opportunity presented. I backed up the truck yesterday on a particular stock. If you want to take your guess, I'm obviously later. We will go through what that stock is, what happened to what they did. They had several announcements, what happened to the stock, and what my thoughts are about it. And then I would love to know what you guys think is going on there, because it just doesn't add up to me, which that certainly isn't the first time. I really believe this is the market being irrational. I really believe it's one of those opportunities that you just got to jump on. And this is a particular thing that happens, and it's a reoccurring theme. And oftentimes, it's when I make some of my biggest purchases. Worked out well for me in the past, but we'll see on this time. Somebody's saying RIOT hit 17, then crashed. I mean, it's down. I wouldn't say it's crashed. It's at 1568. Marathon's crashed. They're basically now, for the price of an extra large soda at the movies, you can get a share of Marathon. You got to get you know how they do it at the movies. The small is $5.90. Extra large is $7. Anyway.
Wowza, Tom. I'm actually in shock that Bitcoin didn't go down more, just so you know.
You thought it would go down further. Although you're bullish, yeah. You have been saying you think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
I think, yeah, I do. But I don't think it'll break. I just can't see it going below 50, Tom.
Well, we'll start right in with some of what I'm calling FUD, but maybe you guys are calling reality. And let's get a poll going as well. How did our online poll of the day go, George?
Now you got to ask me that. Now it's going to take me a second to figure it out.
All right, take your time. Take your time.
It was about the dreaded old things that we talked about for weeks now, and that's the tariffs. The dreaded old tariffs.
That news dropped today. I think they've been sitting on that for months.
Oh, I do too.
And months. And we're going to talk about the first thing I'm going to say, knock on wood, the market didn't panic. And the reality is the market actually, after an initial few minutes of tiny panic, it actually recovered nicely today. And Bitcoin, Bitcoin was up all day today. This was at 8:30 this morning was the low for Bitcoin, and you could see the trend was up all day. So it didn't hurt Bitcoin, it didn't hurt cryptocurrency, it didn't really hurt the equity markets. It helped gold, it helped silver. And I think there was a very nuanced, there's a lot of headlines, and we're going to sift through them for days or weeks, and then we're going to have to see what the reaction to the reaction is, and then what the reaction to that is. This closed some doors. It left a lot of doors open. I'm talking about the Supreme Court's ruling on the president's ability on these emergency tariffs. So they ruled against the president on the emergency tariffs, but they did leave. They made some clarifications that were a little surprising to me, and they left a lot of other doors open. So I think we're a long way from the end of this tariff conversation. But this was a very meaningful decision. We don't, the Supreme Court does a lot of things, most of which we ignore, and the market certainly doesn't care about. But this is one that everybody had their eye on. I think they've known for months what they're going to do, and I can only have my suspicions as to the reasons why they waited until they waited to do this.
It looked like a slow news week, Tom. They're like, oh, we got to put something out there.
Well, it's interesting. It was not close. It was 6-3 against, when the court rate now, and obviously, technically, all members of the Supreme Court are not supposed to have a political affiliation, and there's blah, 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 blah. But the reality is there's 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And this vote went 6-3 against the president. So you can't even say this was just down party lines or any of that kind of stuff. I think there was a very harsh, the dissent was written by Clarence Thomas, and I think that's worth reading. But the bottom line is round 1 of that is done, and there's more to come. By the way, I see 3 people guessing in the comments, maybe 4 Bitdeer as what I may have bought. I think you guys might be onto something.
It might be nice to have some cheddar, Tom.
I am now in the situation where I'm selling certain things that I think have they're great 3-year, 5-year, 10-year holds. That part of my safer part of my portfolio, I'm eating into, because they're just, in my opinion, it's obnoxious where these prices are. And I can't just sit and do nothing on when certain things happen.
Tom, is it true that it's been the first 50 days of this year has been the worst Bitcoin has ever performed?
Funny you should mention that, George. Yes, that is true. Let's go find. So the first 50 days of 2026. Here, Bitcoin logs worst first 50-day start to a year on record. Now, remember, this hasn't been around that long, but it's been around, 15 years now. And this is so far, this is the first 50 days of this year is the worst year Bitcoin's ever had. Too soon to judge, right? We got to take a look and see what happens the rest of this year. There is a long way to go in this year, but there is no doubt we are in the middle of what is an extended pullback. I have been saying for 2 months, I think we're at the bottoming out process of what is the new crypto winter. I don't think we're going to have, now, altcoins are different. They're in a legit crypto winter. In other words, down 70, 75%, 80, 85%, some of them 90%. That's a crypto winter. Bitcoin got down a little over 50%. I think that's the new crypto winter, in my opinion, for Bitcoin. I'm going to show you a lot of articles that strenuously disagree with me and think it's going to get worse or much worse than that. One person had to pull a retraction, and we're going to go through that because their claim was so outrageous that they got beaten up so badly they actually retracted their statement, and modified it. But yes, we are on this 50 days has been brutal. And it hasn't been that brutal for the Bitcoin miners. And a lot of the reason for that, as you guys know, is these aren't just Bitcoin miners anymore. In fact, a lot of them are trying to pretend they're not Bitcoin miners. And I pretend is the wrong word. They're distancing themselves from the Bitcoin portion of their business, and they're focusing on the high performance computing, data center, energy portion of their business, which I think is going to be the bigger part of almost all of these companies' businesses. Certainly by the next halving, there's going to be a shakeup. The last halving, there was a big shakeup. Our list, we had to drop almost 2/3 of the names of the Bitcoin miners off of our list because they just didn't really make it through the last halving. And this time it's going to be a little different. I think we're going to drop maybe even a higher percentage off of the list of Bitcoin miners because they're going to abandon Bitcoin mining, but that doesn't mean they're going to fail. I think this pivot is actually got massive legs. I think as early as we are on Bitcoin, and I think we are super early on Bitcoin, even earlier on cryptocurrency in general. I think we're even earlier still on AI, and these are, the old school pick and shovel plays on the AI industry. It doesn't really matter who wins or loses. Is it Apple? Is it Google? Is it Microsoft? Do they all win? It doesn't matter. They all need power. They all need data centers, and that's what these companies are building. That's what their proficiency is at. They had years of practice in building. Now, they're not the same identical data centers, but essentially, the Bitcoin miners realized about 4 years ago, this isn't about Bitcoin mining machines. This is about energy and efficiency in data centers, cooling, liquid cooling, right? The high performance computing AI machines, they need liquid cooling. They just pretty much don't work without it. So there's a lot of expertise here, and there's a big shift. These guys are getting a big backlog of power, and I think a lot of them have a long way to run. Some of them are lagging behind. The two that, in my opinion, are by far the furthest behind. By the way, if you could do us a favor and smash the like button, it would be greatly appreciated. The thumbs up button, thank you very much. There's two. ABTC they are not a power company. They will never have any power. They are a Bitcoin mining company. They have Bitcoin mining machines. They also hodl Bitcoin. They just went over 6,000 Bitcoin. They're a pure play on Bitcoin. And why do I say they'll never have any energy? Because their parent company is an energy company. They host all their machines. So that's not going to change. So you want a pure play on Bitcoin? You've got one, ABTC. The next closest thing to a pure play on Bitcoin, and I don't think that they want to be, and I don't think that they're ultimately going to be. In fact, they finally put out a press release today, although it was insignificant compared to what I was expecting. Marathon is still much closer to a pure play Bitcoin miner. Most of the other Bitcoin miners are somewhere in the, late, early innings or the middle or well into getting, billion or multi-billion dollar contracts. So a lot of these guys have already gone a long way.
I still haven't found the freaking poll, Tom. I'm
still
sitting here looking for it.
Find the poll. Let's start a
Yeah.
poll. Speaking of which, typing, guys, give me a second. All right, we're doing this is going to be a crypto winter poll. Get back to the Bitcoin. So just quickly while I'm doing this, we're at 67,700. So we're going to go to the 1-day chart. There's a significant number I'd like to be at by the time the 1 week candle closes this week. Today, the Bitcoin miners, you can see Bitcoin was up 0.92% from yesterday's close to today's close. Marathon was green. That's it. And it was 0.13% green. So basically flat on the day. Microstrategy was green, up 1.24. And everybody else was red. And IREN and CIFR, for no particular reason that I can figure out, at 12 o'clock today and for the rest of the day, they went from green, IREN was on fire, and they just tanked the rest of the day. Those guys both ended up down 7%. Just an afternoon, I don't know if it's profit taking. I don't know what it is. Sour Melon Gaming is saying, Tom, Mer has no value. Sure, they hold a lot of Bitcoin, but it's been drowned out by massive debt dilution, and they're losing money on every business venture they pursue. I understand your frustration with Marathon. I will never argue that they are one of the great Bitcoin mining companies or one of the great management teams or any of those things, but they do have over 50,000 Bitcoin. I am very bullish on Bitcoin, and they're just simply priced significantly. Yes, they have some debt, but they have, it pales in comparison to the amount of the value of their Bitcoin, even with Bitcoin here at these drastically reduced numbers. So I still think this is a $10 or $15 billion company. If Bitcoin performs as a B and they perform as a C or a C minus, I think that, and it is, so to be fair, it's a position that it's the first position I will get out of Sour Melon Gaming. And so it's not a long-term high conviction play for me. I just think they are wildly, ridiculously, stupidly oversold, in my opinion, not financial advice. And so I think it's easy for them at this point to pull a double or a triple while not even really doing very well. So that's how I feel about Marathon. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, let me tell you, I'm already wrong. I am very deep into the red on Marathon. I've been saying that's my only stock in the red, but that is not correct. Upon further review, and particularly after what happened this week, I am pretty deep in the red on Bitdeer. Now, it's a smaller position, or it was until this week, and that's pretty beaten down too. So I have 2 Bitcoin miners that I'm doing. I'm pretty deep in the red on. Everything else I'm in the green on. Some of them I'm up crazy just because of the amount that I bought during the last crypto winter. But Marathon's been the big loser, period. But you're going to see Bitdeer's been Those two have really separated themselves from a stock performance standpoint. Those are the two losers by a mile, and it's not even close. My portfolio reflects that. Their chart reflects that. Their market cap reflects that. To put it in perspective, Marathon went from 10 times bigger market cap than IREN to 1/10 the market cap of IREN in, I don't know, 2 years, 2.5 years. I've never seen anything like it.
When do you think they get rid of Fred?
Never.
No. Does he hold a large chunk of stock?
He just seems to be ingrained. He's a part of their culture. They do weird stuff. I don't get, nothing's easy. I understand that, but these guys have been in this as long or longer than almost anybody. They were around for the 2017 bull run. Things have scaled up so dramatically, and this industry has changed so radically. It's not even what was happening even in the 2021 cycle just does not resemble what's happening right now. These companies have to be very, very different. But most of them, most of the people that are left have made they've majorly adapted to conditions on the ground. They've gotten totally vertically integrated. As a result of that, they've learned how to become energy companies and data center companies. And as a result of that, they can now build data centers for AI and make even more money than they were ever going to make as Bitcoin miners. So the upside to me on some of these stocks actually went way up. On others, it didn't. Marathon, I don't think will ever get back to their previous all-time high unless they can prove they're still not even 100% fully integrated on their Bitcoin miners. They still have some of those hosted by others. Now, they've made massive progress, and if you remember, initially, they were the asset light company. They said, we're going to do this different than everybody else. We are not going to own all of our infrastructure. We're going to have Bitcoin mining machines, and we're going to have more than everybody else, and that's how we're going to make money. And that made sense in 2020. It does not. By the end of 2021, it didn't make sense. It certainly makes no sense right now. And they've come a long way. They have over 1 gigawatt of power, and they're adding more. They did a deal today that I didn't really get a good sense of, how to quantify that deal. It's outside of the United States. It's another joint venture. They are the king of joint ventures. I'm just not sure what they're doing. I'm going to hold the stock. I think it's going to get back to positive for me, and then, I'll get rid of it over time. That's going to be my first thing I sell in all likelihood. That's my plan anyway. But for now, I do think in the sevens, I think that's crazy. This was an $80-something stock. Now, I know they've diluted a lot since then, but they also have 50-something thousand Bitcoin since then, and 60 exahash of Bitcoin mining, etc. So,
is it just that we bought into the hype, Tom?
On Marathon?
Yeah.
Well, everybody, for me, I'll tell you, it's that a lot of people sold. Right. So, and for those of you still holding, I'm still holding. I've actually continued to buy. And I think when it's done, I'm going to be glad that I did. But I could be wrong. But when it went under 8, I made another big purchase. So, because I do think it's natural at some point these companies cross paths with their fair market value. Marathon is not there right now. They went from they were the largest market cap Bitcoin miner for years. And now they're, 8th place, 9th place. Everybody else is double, triple, quadruple, 5 times their size, 10 times their size. I understand Marathon's fallen a step behind, but they it's if this was a marathon, everybody's acting like they're still running the first mile while everyone else is kind of heading towards the finish line. I just don't think the discrepancy is that big. They're still, I think from an exahash standpoint and from a number of Bitcoin mined per month, I think they're probably the second biggest Bitcoin miner out there. And that's as of this month. As of last month, they were the biggest every single month for the last, I don't know, 30 months in a row. So, you know, they haven't done some of the things they need to do, but all is not lost in my opinion. But a lot of people, you know, if you got out, listen, if you got out $10 ago or $20 ago, congratulations, because that was a great time to get out. And you might be thinking about getting back in right now, or you might say, you know what, I'm just never touching those guys again.
I think I got out around 17.
Yeah, so that was a huge win for you. And so
it was a huge loss. But
well, you were down, but did you reallocate that to something better? Because
no, actually, I didn't.
Marathon got a lot. Well, that's the other part of it. It's where'd you put it?
I think what we should start doing is, you heard the opposite of Kramer, inverse Kramer, inverse George.
Okay, let's get our first poll up after all this time. All right, so what's the deal with the crypto winner?
Are you setting this up for a joke? What's the deal with this crypto winner?
And I've given here's the choices. It's just starting and it's going to get worse. We're in the middle of it. It's almost over. Or lastly, we're going to hit a new Bitcoin all-time high in 2026. Yes, this year in 2026. So not to skew anybody, because you guys don't care what I have to say anyway, but I will tell you, I think we're going to hit a new all-time high in 2026. And I know that's probably going to finish in last place, and it's probably going to finish in a very solid last place. That would be my guess. Thoughts, George? You want to let people know where you are on this chart?
No, because I got stuck in looking up Marathon. I only lost, well, in theory, it's not that bad. In theory, I didn't lose as much as I thought, so.
Well,
I thought it was really, really bad, but it wasn't.
I'm down just about 50% on my Marathon. And understand, I've quadrupled my number of shares over the last 3 years. So I have been dollar cost averaging in all the way as recently as February 5th of this year.
So last year, with selling and the wash rule and all that, I only lost 3% of my total. That's not bad at all. So 3% is what I lost.
You didn't do bad. I'm down 50 right now on that thing. Having said that, I'm up 400% on IREN. So, you know, it just...
These swing trades were so awesome last year. And they're not happening yet this year. That's what's concerning to me.
I feel like, for you personally, I feel like you had a run where you dedicated some time, you got a really good sense of the rhythm of what these stocks were doing, and you were swing trading them very successfully. But
Marathon, that's the only one. Marathon just got me. Everything else I made money on, but I lost so much on Marathon, I just read them wrong.
Gambit Pierce saying,
crazy.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm there too. Gambit Pierce said, Tom, you're so confident that everything is going up that you wouldn't consider taking some money out of your IREN and Bitfarms and having some powder for any big drop. So my powder is, and really this is kind of breaking the rules, if you will, or the rules of thumb anyway. I have been shifting some of my low risk, long-term investments into these high-risk investments. So I'm doubling down, and I don't want to take profits on IREN because I think we're going to laugh at IREN $40. I think that number is ridiculous. These guys are a bigger player in AI. There's going to be $650 billion of CapEx spent by the Magnificent Seven stocks. So just the top 7 companies, which are all tech companies, are going to spend over $600 billion just in 2026, and they expect to spend more than that in 2027. Building out the infrastructure now. A lot of that obviously is chips and hardware and software and land and everything under the sun. But at the end of the day, you can have as many high performance computers as you want, but unless they're sitting in a data center running, they're not worth anything. And that's what these companies provide. So there's plenty of money to go around. There's going to be trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And we'll do this poll next. I think the chances that AI is not a multi-trillion dollar industry, I think that the chances of that have gone to essentially zero. That is happening. We're in the middle of it happening. And it's not something that's going to happen over 50 years or 100 years. It's not, cryptocurrency is moving fast. We're 15 years in, and yes, it's a million X if you held Bitcoin at 5 cents, but it's still in early stages. It's going to take a long time to get to the finish line. AI, we're going to go from 0 to 100 as fast as they possibly can, and a lot of it is because it is the cutting edge technology, and it's you're either going to win right now or you're going to lose. If you fall a generation behind or multiple generations behind, you're out of the game. And these companies that are $2.5 trillion, $3 trillion, $4 trillion, $5 trillion companies, they are not going to risk that. They are all in on this. And so I think there's years of this. People were talking about, and it stopped and it was nonsense. And I said every single stream, if you guys were here with me, I said talking about an AI bubble right now is absolutely ridiculous. Look at the revenue, look at the PEs. There's nothing about this that resembles in any way, shape, or form any previous bubble that's ever happened. We are early days on this, and it's just going to get better. Now, are there going to be some winners and losers? Yes, there'll be people that have AI products that don't catch on, that don't work, that misallocate, misspend, right? When you're doing that much CapEx, you can either be very successful or wasteful. But the thing is, none of it matters when you're the picks and shovels guys. Everybody's still buying your picks and shovels. And that's the power and the data centers. So, and Sour Melon Gaming said, BlackRock didn't save us from winter. We were wrong. So I think that we had this 50% pullback. And I will say, that's more than I thought. I had said at the peak, I said, I think in the future, we're going to have, not like regular markets, 20% is a bear market for equity markets. I thought for Bitcoin, we would start to live in a world where we would get 40% pullbacks. And that was going to be the new crypto winter. That was going to be the new bear market versus the 80 to 90% pullbacks that we used to get. Now, we're already past my 40%. We got to 52%. I think that was the bottom. That was almost exactly $60,000 and on ultra high volume. So a lot of that felt very much like the bottom. But if you look at previous crypto winter bottoms, the bad news is, and George, this goes to kind of what you've been pounding the table on. This is going to be a tale of 2 years this year. Yeah. The first half of this year could stink. That's just the bottom. It has not started well. It could be bad. But I think for what that's going to mean for Bitcoin, if you look at the technical charts, the last time we got into this territory from a technical standpoint, there's only been 2 other times. We are now in bottom of the crypto winter territory from a technical standpoint. So on the daily RSI, on the weekly RSI, on the monthly RSI, we are right now on all three of those. This is one of the three worst readings we've ever had in the history of Bitcoin. So that tells me, and the other two were at the very, very, very bottom of the crypto winters. So that's why I think this is the bottom of the crypto winter. I do think, though, what came after both of those readings, both of the times we were in a similar place on the RSI, particularly on the 1 week and the 1 month. The 1 day is, that's telling you trends over weeks and months, but the 1 week and the 1 month are telling you bigger trends. The last time we were here on the 1 week and the 1 month, we spent 5 or 6 months going sideways and then had a big run up. So is it possible we're just sitting here going sideways? Yes, that was the bottom. Yes, we were epically, historically oversold. But that doesn't mean that what comes next is a new all-time high. Now, I said I think there's going to be a new all-time high by the end of 2026, but we're 315 days away from that. So I got some time on that one. Could we have 4 or 5 boring months in the middle? That seems possible. And there's a lot of people that think it's going to get a lot worse. I'm going to go through some of those articles right now just to show you what's going on out there. These are all in the last couple of weeks. So in this article, and I'm not going to bore you with the details, I'm just going to kind of give you headlines and you'll see where I'm going with this. Bitcoin's long-term rally is broken until it reclaims 85,000. This is Durbit Executive. A Bitcoin price drop to 58,000 could reignite buying momentum. Well, this was on February 13th. So if you go to we basically got to 60,000 on February 6th. I made my big purchases on this giant red candle. This is when I really made some pretty significant changes. On this red candle right here, we then actually candle wick down and then had this might have been the biggest green candle, I think it was, that we've ever had from not a percentage standpoint, but from a straight dollar standpoint in Bitcoin's history. And this was the worst red candle we've ever had from a dollar standpoint in Bitcoin history. So those happened both on extremely high volume, back-to-back days in a row. That tells me local bottom, capitulation, but you can see this is very sideways. This is exactly choppy and sideways, up and down and up and down. So maybe we're in for a long haul on that. Now, he's saying 58,000 is going to be a significant number. I don't even have that line on here. And for it to have just gotten down to 60, I think it was a little bit of a weird call to say, 60 is not quite enough. We got to get to 58. Maybe he's right. I don't know. Okay, so there's somebody calling for 58,000. Next, Standard Chartered sees Bitcoin sliding to 50,000. This was on February 12th, and Ethereum to 1,400. The bank cut its 2026 crypto pricing targets, warning of further near-term capitulation as ETF outflows and macro headwinds weigh on digital assets. This was on February 12th. It's 8 days later. We haven't really seen that yet. 8 days is way too soon to judge whether or not this person's right or wrong. I understand that. But, the next leg wasn't down. So far, we have done some serious consolidation over that period of time. Okay, so that's 50. We were at 58,000. Now we're at 50,000. Where do we go from here? Well, naturally, 40,000. Forget 80,000. Michael Turpin warns Bitcoin could revisit the 40,000s before a real recovery. Turpin argues that Bitcoin's post-halving bubble followed its typical arc and says history suggests the market may still face another wave of pain. So here's a person, and there are a lot of people, and maybe we'll do a poll next, who think we're still in the typical 4-year cycle. This last 4-year cycle, although it had some, people like to say history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes. And a lot of people think this was close enough that we peaked, somewhere in the neighborhood of when we typically peak as far as number of days after the halving. And now we're headed into a crypto winter. So that's what this person's suggesting, saying, listen, we could pull back to the 40,000s. Then, go ahead, George. What?
No, I was just reading Sour Melons Gaming. This isn't you know what it is? This is what is a bad snowstorm that doesn't stop. They just keep dumping snow on us.
Yeah. I don't know about those anymore, but I have endured.
Tom, I sold at $19.26. Can you believe Bitcoin was ever at $19.26?
You sold Marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was at $35.
Yeah.
This is why I'm saying in the sevens, listen, they're not hitting a home run. They're not even hitting a single, maybe. But
so I have a new thing. If I'm not confident at 10%, I pull out. I'm just like, you know what? I messed up. I'm an idiot. I'm pulling out.
So you got a stop loss. That's reasonable. A lot of people save a lot of money with that philosophy. Now, your risk...
If it goes up 10%, I sell too.
Well, that's a pretty tight range.
Well, I mean, if I'm not confident in it, you know what I mean?
Okay, if you've lost conviction. Sourmelon Gaming, Tom Lee has been wrong in everything he has said, but people still listen to him. Wild. Wow.
Yeah, it's another thing about that? He's been wrong with everything. Why would people be giving him money for the ETH? That's my question.
And they're not just giving him money. They're giving him money hand over fist. His new company, BitMine, now has over 4 million Ethereum.
Right.
There's no other company on Earth that has even 10% of that. I don't think there's another company on Earth that has 5% of the amount of Ethereum that BitMine has. They are at now an $8 billion loss on paper. But again,
whoa,
paper loss.
Kidding me?
Paper losses don't matter.
Well, if you hold the paper, it does.
Here's the point. If 5 years from now he's at a $80 billion gain, then did it matter that in the middle it went down? Because what you really want, and I know this is ultra hard, but as a long-term investor, I'm talking 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or longer-term investor, you're hoping that your first purchase is not at the absolute bottom, because if you're like most people, you're dollar cost averaging in. You don't just turn around one day and go, I'm putting, all my money into this one stock. Now, maybe some of you do that. I know some people do that. Sometimes they've gotten lucky. There was some people that did that with Tesla that turned out to be a home run for them. There's some people that did that with Bitcoin back in the day. It turned out to be a home run. There's some people that did that with NVIDIA. It turned out to be a home run. I'm not one of those people. I try to keep diversified, and I'm looking longer term. So when I buy something, if it goes down, to me, if it goes down 10, 20, 30, 40%, as long as I still believe that it's going to end up where it's going to end up, that just means I get to double, triple, quadruple the amount that I have, so that when it gets where it's going, I make a lot more money that way. So that's where Tom Lee is at. Now, at this moment in time, you can just look at him and say, since the day he opened that company, every single day he's been wrong. And that's true. So, if you want to judge him on this time frame, he's just dead wrong. And here's the thing. He's bullish. He's just bullish. Even when he tries to be bearish, it's still bullish. He just doesn't have it in him to be anything other than bullish. So, and that's all right. It takes all kinds. But I do think he's right long term. Now, I don't know about Ethereum. I will tell you guys, the several times I've researched Ethereum, for me, I never get a level of comfort that I get with Bitcoin. To me, Bitcoin makes absolute perfect sense. I understand it from beginning to end. No matter how much I study Ethereum, I just don't get it. I just don't. That's just me.
I don't get it either.
I don't get it, but it's the second biggest cryptocurrency. It is considered an altcoin. It's still much smaller than Bitcoin, but it is by far the second biggest cryptocurrency. There's a lot of people that think there's 2 or 3 cryptocurrencies that are going to pass Ethereum. Sour Melon Gaming, very harsh. I get Sam Bankman-Fried vibes with Tom Lee and Michael Saylor. Saylor still has denied to prove any of their holdings. Michael Saylor basically came out and said, and now you can believe him or you can not believe him, but he basically said there really is no number. And then if you look at his balance sheet and how things are structured, doesn't really have a lot of secured debt. They own their Bitcoin. So there really is, for all intents and purposes, there's really no number. There used to be like, if we just get it down to X, we're going to put Michael Saylor out of business. Well, he said, I can go 10 years paying all my interest, all my dividends, if Bitcoin sits here at 60,000 for the next 10 years. So I actually, on the 5th, and then I said so, pardon me, on the, very next stream after that, I reopened a position I closed a long time ago in Microstrategy. I sold my Microstrategy at $350. I bought it back at $109. So I feel like that was a really good buying opportunity. That's my opinion. I think that company is going to be a better play. I own a lot of the Bitcoin ETF itself, which is just a direct 1-to-1, minus whatever insignificant fees there are. I think MicroStrategy will be better than a 1-to-1 play on Bitcoin. I think it'll be at least a 1.5-to-1 play on Bitcoin. I think it's fairly safe. I think it bottomed. It got down to almost $100 from $543. It got down to almost $100. So I got out at $350 and got back in, under $110. So that's how I'm playing that. We'll see. But I expect, if you're tuning into Tom Lee or if you're tuning into Michael Saylor and you expect anything other than something extremely bullish regarding Bitcoin and or Ethereum, then, you haven't been paying attention, because that's it. That's all you're going to get out of them forever, regardless of how this all turns out.
So what'd you buy, Tom?
Oh, all right. Well, let's get to that. Here's what I bought.
Drum roll, please.
Well, everybody guessed it, so I think they were on track. I bought Bitdeer. I already owned Bitdeer. I started buying Bitdeer maybe a year and a half ago. It was one of the last ones I started buying. And it was by no means my biggest position, but I had gotten it to a reasonable place, and it got destroyed. It finished yesterday down just under 18%. At one point, it was down like 22% on the day. So I'm going to show you the charts. Bitdeer has absolutely tanked. And I will tell you, I was talking about buying Bitdeer. I did not, on the 5th, I did not buy any Bitdeer. So I bought a bunch of stocks, and I had to sell out of a few, longer term things that were slower momentum plays to get into these. And Bitdeer was not one. But I did say that will be the next stock that I buy. Well, little did I know I was going to get this opportunity, because since the day I said that, it's down, and that was only, 10 days ago. It's down like 25 or 30%. So I backed up the truck on Bitdeer. I sold all my PayPal, and you guys are going, you got PayPal? PayPal got so oversold that I have been slowly building a position in PayPal. I won't even get into that. Again, I don't think they're ever going to be an A+ company, but they are being graded as an F- right now. If you look at what PayPal's doing, if you look at their balance sheet, if nothing else, they buy $6 billion of their own stock every year. There is a floor on what they do, and they make money every year. They cash flow like crazy every year. I don't want to go on a PayPal rant, but I do think they will have a long, slow recovery. It's not in the next 6 to 12 months, but that's when you build out your positions, is over time. But I said, you know what? I'm not going to wait 18 to 36 months for PayPal to finally be back in the good graces of investors when I can sell and get into these other stocks that all tanked. There was a red day where everything was down 15%, 20%, 25%. So I got to get into some things I wasn't in at all. I got to get into CIFR. I got to get into TeraWolf in the $12 range. And I thought, that this opportunity is not likely to come by again. So that's what I did on the 5th. But here, I bought Bitdeer in the 7s. I think it closed under $8 today. So, and I bought that yesterday. So all day today was still, in my opinion, let's go take a look at what. Yeah, Bitdeer closed. Bitdeer is at $7.78. I bought at like $7.95. And I could not believe that it was under $8. And I'm going to go to their chart right now. And then I'm going to show you what they did. And I don't think people get it, or the big money gets it and they know this is like the golden opportunity. One of the biggest times I buy stock, and I've done this endless number of times, when a company does stock dilution through either straight at the market offerings, or even better than that, preferred, convertible preferred stock, oftentimes their stock tanks at least 1-to-1 with the amount of money they're raising, which makes no sense. A lot of times it tanks significantly worse than the amount of money they're raising, i.e., the amount of dilution they're getting. And remember, if your company's diluting 10%, in this case, they're getting $325 million for that. So it's not like you're getting nothing. You should not get $300 million and have your market cap go down, right? Which happens almost every time one of these is announced. I'm not saying the stock shouldn't go down. The market cap of the company should not go down. If in exchange for equity, you're getting hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, and your stock and your market cap, your company becomes worth less than it was, it doesn't make any sense. And historically speaking, there is a fairly rapid 30-day or less correction right back to where it was before that ever happened. So that's a swing trade type of a deal. IREN for me is a longer term hold, because I had just got through explaining to everybody why I think they put out their annual earnings. I think everybody is underestimating. I'm sorry. This is IREN. I should be on Bitdeer. And if I've been saying IREN, I mean Bitdeer. I think everybody look at where this tanked to. Right? This purple line was holding. This was at $9.50. This was a very strong line going back, almost a year ago. This stock got up to over $27. It's trading for $7.78 right now. By the way, in between the time when it was at $27, they were at 10 exahash of Bitcoin mining. They're now over 60 exahash. They're bigger than Marathon. They are now, this is the biggest Bitcoin mining company in the world, publicly traded. They make their own machines, so they get them for less. They're highly efficient, and they're just going to keep growing. And oh, by the way, they have 1.6 gigawatt active energy under control and another 1.4 past that in their pipeline to get them to a total of 3 gigawatts under contract, which makes them one of the big players in this industry. Now, they haven't had the big, giant AI contract yet. So that's out ahead of them. That's a catalyst that's yet to come. If it never comes, then they've failed. But they are the biggest Bitcoin miner. They have one of the biggest backlogs and pipelines of power. And this company is being priced as if it's, again, this is being priced. There's no other way to look at this. This is being priced as an F. So if we look at, I mean, look, you're talking about like this goes back all the way to October of 2024. I mean, and again, they're magnitudes bigger company than they were back then. And all they do is exactly what they've been telling people they're going to do. And their stock has gotten crushed for it. So if I go look at their company, do us a favor, if you would, please, if you'd be so kind, smash the like button, hit the thumbs up button. It does help the stream out in real time. It helps the channel out. We're here every Friday after the market closes. For members, we're here every Tuesday after the market closes. So we appreciate you guys, and we appreciate you hitting the thumbs up button. Bitdeer, this is what I'm here to show you. Their market cap, $1.7 billion. $1.7 billion. Here, pick a Bitcoin miner, George. Any Bitcoin miner.
Okay, ABTC.
Well, this will put it in perspective. ABTC is half their market cap. Only ABTC and Hive have a smaller market cap. But these companies, ABTC has 0 power pipeline versus 3 gigawatts, and they have significantly less than half the exahash of Bitcoin mining. Yet they're 900 to 1.7. They're more than half the price. So nothing about that lines up. If you look at companies like, to me, Bitdeer is more of a CIFR. I think they're actually better than CIFR. CIFR's basically weaning out of Bitcoin mining, so you can just forget that part of their world. They do have a nice pipeline of energy coming up, not as big as Bitdeer's, but they're a $5.7 billion company. Why is CIFR $5.7 billion and Bitdeer, go back one more, Bitdeer is $1.7 billion? TeraWulf. TeraWulf's a $6.2 billion company. I think 1 year from now, Bitdeer will have a higher market cap than CIFR, and it will have a higher market cap than TeraWulf. That's how underpriced I think that Bitdeer is. And it's not the first time, because I want to show you guys. Let's go back to where we started. I bought IREN about 310 days ago at $6. Right? That was somewhere in here. Somewhere in April of 20. Well, it was, I got the date. It was April 23rd, 2025. I bought IREN for $6.17. It's $40 right now, by the way, down from $75. So this pulled a $6 to $75 run in like 5 months. So when you think like, that doesn't happen, that can't happen. No, it does. That's exactly what happens. That's the risk reward of these companies, right? If you're in the right, everybody's not going to get this, but if the companies are doing the right things, they are intentionally mispriced, underpriced, shorted. These are small market cap companies. There's low volume. They're easily manipulated. They're held down. You think somehow Wall Street here thought this company was worth $6, but a few months later thought it was worth $76? You think that was from an analysis they did? No, it was manipulation.
What do you think Bitdeer will end up at?
I think Bitdeer can have this type of run.
An IREN type of run?
Let's put it this way. In October, we're now in February. In October, 4 months ago, this was a $27 stock, up 253% from where it is today. And the company's doubled their exahash since October in 4 months. So they're twice as big a company. And then I'm going to show you what they did. It's not like you'll go, well, you know what? If they borrowed $3 billion, that's brutal. No, they didn't do that. $325 million of convertible debt, convertible at $10 a share. And most of this is basically to pay off debt. It's just a refinance. This was a refinance of debt due in 2029. So about half of these dollars are going to refinance existing debt for debt at a lower price that's out 3 years further into the future with a higher strike point. So how does that crash a stock, right? They lost double this in market cap. It doesn't make any sense. Now, they did put out another thing that was a little confusing for one day, but this has been cleared up. Bitdeer announces proposed registered direct offering of Class A ordinary shares. So on the same day as they did the 300, originally this was going to be a $300 million. It was upsized. The interest, as always with these companies, interest exceeds their initial expectation. They did 325 million. By the way, there's an option for another 50 past that, which will be taken in almost all likelihood. So that's $375 million they're going to get their hands on. They're going to pay off a bunch of debt. So they're just switching out debt to push it 3 years down the road. And then they're going to buy some capped calls to mitigate the fact that this is convertible debt. And then they're going to invest money into high performance computing infrastructure. Wasn't that what we want them to do? So how is this tank a company that was already the worst performing company of the year? If I go to 2025, not 2026, the worst performing company of the year last year was Bitdeer. While Bitcoin was down 6% on the year, Bitdeer was down 48% in 2025. And remember, they were going through massive growth. Marathon actually did so poorly near the end of the year, they almost caught Bitdeer. Marathon down 46%. So these are two different companies for me. Marathon, I'm down even more than this. Bitdeer, I started much later dollar cost averaging into this. So I'm still very red on it. Don't get me wrong. So that was 2025. If we look at year to date 2026, that's the wrong color. Okay. So if you look at this year, Bitdeer, which was down 48% last year, is down another 31% already this year. It's only February 20th. This stock is cratering. So I think it's wildly undervalued. It's worth a third or a quarter or a fifth or a tenth its peers. It doesn't make sense to me. And so I think that's opportunity. Now, I don't know. I have no idea how long I'm going to have to wait for it. But unless something changes financially, their balance sheet's just fine. It's not fantastic, but they're not going to run out of money. They already have most of this up and running, right? They're going to have 70 or 80 exahash of Bitcoin mining up and running. So if Bitcoin can just make a little bit of a recovery, just on that alone, they're very cash flow positive from operations. Now, they spend more in CapEx building out infrastructure than they are. So they spend more in investing than they get from operations, but they're cash flow positive from operations. They make money on their Bitcoin, even at these awful prices. Cash. I shouldn't say make money. They make cash. Remember, that takes depreciation out of the equation, which is not cash. So this is what they did. They borrowed $325 million. And then the last piece of this that was a mystery, well, what's this stuff? Are they going to, in addition to that, are they going to put out like, $1 billion of at the market offering? No, they clarified that. Let's see. Bitdeer announces pricing of registered direct offering. It's only 5.5 million shares. So to put that in perspective, shares outstanding, implied shares outstanding, 221 million. They're putting another 5 million out there. That's not significant. They're getting $43 million of cash for that on top of the 375. So they're getting about $400 million in cash. So everything's all quantified now. This all makes sense to me. Yet for some reason, their stock dropped more in market cap. They have more money, and the market cap went down. So somebody can tell me how that makes sense, because I don't get it. And what typically follows, and again, there's no guarantee, and who knows how long it takes. Now, there are certain companies that have no revenue. So if you're in a small cap, high growth company, and it does something like this, they have no revenue, they have no working product, and they just continue to put money into research and development and lose money in their negative cash flow. Well, then you can get these types of dilutions and you can see the market value go down. And it's because everybody knows, well, this is just another money they're borrowing so they can lose this money and then borrow some more. That's not this company. This company had like $300 million in revenue last quarter.
I'm with you, Doug. I'm looking for a miracle too.
I think we all are right now. I think Marathon is manipulated. I mean, I think they're all highly manipulated. I do think Marathon has earned some of the... It's being bought and sold as an F. And until they prove they're not an F, or until Bitcoin runs, they're not going to move very much. So they could still keep being an F, but if Bitcoin doubles, they're going to double or triple. I think they can do better than an F. Maybe I'm wrong.
There's an interesting one. How would we rate Trump's economy right now? That's an interesting poll. I'll put it up.
You want to put that poll up? So let's look at, you want me to end this one? What's the deal with the crypto winner? First place is it's just getting started. It's going to get worse, 36%. Second place, we're in the middle, 28%. Third place, it's almost over at 21%. And in last place, we're going to hit a new all-time high this year, is at 15%. So more bearish than bullish, and I understand that. Oh, by the way, I got to circle back around to I did not finish this story. So when last we left off, we were at, and that pertains to this poll we're doing.
It's a quick poll, real quick.
When last we left off, we were looking at Michael Turpin talking about Bitcoin in the 40,000s. Well, not to be outdone, Mike McGlone said Bitcoin could fall to $10,000 as U.S. recession risks build. McGlone links Bitcoin's downturn to record U.S. market cap to GDP levels, low equity volatility, and rising gold prices, warning of potential contagion into stocks. So Bitcoin, $10,000. Okay, so here's how this went for Mike. This came out yesterday. Mike McGlone softens Bitcoin downside target to $28,000 after backlash over $10,000 call. So the members will know I said this is absolutely ridiculous. If Bitcoin hits $10,000, I'm here to tell you it's my opinion. It's over. Didn't work out. Somehow we were all 100% wrong, and cryptocurrency's nothing. So that would be my opinion at Bitcoin $10,000. Mike McGlone a week ago thought that was on the table and had apparently got enough pressure from his peers to take a step back and say, well, maybe not $10,000, but $28,000.
That just shows you that he has no conviction on anything he's saying.
Oh, I agree. This completely eliminates all of his credibility. This is from 10,000 to 28,000 is almost a triple.
Who's MMG? Who's MMG?
Let's see. Bloomberg intelligence analyst. So this is somebody that works for Bloomberg, right? This is not miscellaneous. Bloomberg intelligence analyst Mike McGlone has shifted his Bitcoin downside target from 10,000 to about 28,000 after criticism that his earlier call was alarmist and risky for investors. Excuse me. McGlone now argues that 28,000 is a more probable level based on historical price distribution and maintains that his analysis shows why investors should avoid Bitcoin and other risks. So I guess he ran a new model. His old one somehow changed in the last few days, and now 28,000 is probable. Critics, including Jason Fernandez and Maddie Greenspan, say the revised $28,000 target is still unlikely or overly deterministic, warning that such stark forecasts can distort positioning and put real capital at risk in reflexive crypto markets. So they're still saying, you thought it was going to be 10,000, you just tripled it almost to 28,000? That's still ridiculous. Which I agree with. I would not say it's impossible. 10,000.
What does he specialize in, Tom?
In changing his opinion.
No, MMG. I just was wondering what he specializes in.
I don't know. This is not.
You know how they have sectors? You know what I mean?
This is not a person that I know other than he does work for Bloomberg Intelligence. Mike McGlone appears to be walking back his 10,000 of a forecast after being challenged on social media and accused of being an alarmist whose nonsensical forecast put real capital at risk. I mean, obviously, one of the things he does is cryptocurrency because he's putting out a price target for Bitcoin.
Does he have like a page or something that you can go to?
He's an analyst. I mean, if you've got there's several places you can go to pay for getting all the, analysts. And I don't know what else he covers. I don't know him. I know one thing about him. He thought Bitcoin was going to $10,000. And then a few days later, he said, no, oops, it's actually $28,000. So let's see what he says next week.
My bad. Be honest, those who voted very bad just hate Trump a minute. Oh. I put okay, just so you know.
Listen, it's tough out there.
I put it's probably between okay and bad,
By the way, this is the question I would ask everybody. Did it just get tough right now?
No,
or are we 3 or 4 years? Right, they shut the world down for COVID. For a brief period of time in the middle, they were raining money down from the sky and throwing it at anybody who could catch it. So we had a little while where everybody had a few dollars. The stock market had a bubble. Right? Worthless companies were worth $50 billion. But then we went back to reality. And, we've been complaining about the grocery store. We've been talking about it on this channel for 3.5 or 4 years. The grocery store is a nightmare. Right? I mean, maybe some of you out there don't need to worry about it, but I still look at when I go to the grocery store and check out, every single time for the last 4 years, I just can't believe what groceries cost. So this is no new news here. This is what's happening. And we got a number that we got to talk about. We got a GDP number today that was not very good. And I think there's a very explainable reason for that. But until we see lower interest rates, until we see a healthier job market, until we see much higher GDP growth and wages starting to keep up with inflation, everybody's looking at the inflation target. You got to look at wages. Wages have been stagnant. And if costs continue to rise and wages don't go with them, that's the mismatch we're living in right now. And we've been living in it for years. It's not great. I think it can fix. But it can't fix until we lower the rates. That's my opinion. So Trump's Fed pick says AI could push down interest rates soon. Disagreements are already brewing. So just understand, everybody priced in. Kevin Warsh was not the person everybody thought was going to get nominated. That was a little bit of a surprise. He was one of the finalists, but he was not the leader. And people did not think this was going to be the pick. And then the immediate knee-jerk story was, this guy's very hawkish. He's more likely to raise rates than he is to lower rates. Well, no, he's already telling you. He's crystal clear. He wants to lower rates. He is going to lower rates. The market has not priced that in yet. So I just think there's a lot of things that are going to happen that go to George's theory that the first half of this year is tough. It's tough. It's been tough for a long time. I do think this
tale of 2 years.
Right. So I'm starting to be on board your theory, George, that, I'm looking at the second half of the year more so than the first half of the year. And because time flies, it's already February 20th. The year will be half over before we know it.
I know time doesn't move too quick. So here's my next question. What do you think Trump could do to help the economy? That's going to be my next question. I mean, I won't do that as a poll, but I'm just curious if anybody has any ideas.
Yeah, drop in the chat if you have any ideas. I mean, I can tell you, I think that the job market is turning the corner. this government shutdown that we had. So let's go. This is a.
See, I don't think the job market's turning the corner. I think the numbers are turning the corner. But I mean, with all the AI layoffs that have just happened recently, to me, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of hurt in the middle. You know what I mean?
I am gonna, for as confident as I was that AI is not only the future but the present, I do think that when it's all said and done with, AI is going to be exactly like every single other piece of technology that's come along. And we got to remember, for those of you old enough, put yourself.
100% disagree with that one.
I know you do, but remember, I'm old enough to remember when there was no computers. I mean, I was in public accounting. We didn't have computers. We had 10 keys. We had giant ledgers of paper, and we did things by hand. And then the computer came along, and everybody said, oh, no, everybody's going to be out of a job. The company that I worked for that had like 80,000 employees back then, they have 400. It's 25, 30 years later. They have 400,000 employees now. Not only did people not get a job, the computers greatly increased the amount of jobs. It increased the efficiency. It has increased profitability among companies. Then the internet came along. Oh, it's all going to be the internet. We're all screwed. No, every time technology comes along, it's so far, and maybe this is the game changer. Maybe this is the exception. But in the past, right, I can tell you, I got out of accounting when we just started getting everybody, they bought, in a test area, one of my offices, they bought 10,000 laptops. So we were one of the offices that converted to the computer. Every single employee got a laptop, and we were going to do paperless audits. So everything was going to be done on the computer. They spent tens of millions of dollars creating proprietary software, training us on it. They sent us away for weeks to train. Well, we went through that whole season, and what happened was we did every single thing we usually do on the computer, and then we did it all on paper and stored it. So there were 0 less pieces of paper the next year. Now, I'm sure they've gotten better since then, right? If anybody's in public accounting, you can tell me if there's still any paper hanging around. I'm gonna bet there's an awful lot of paper left hanging around. So I don't know. I don't know what the new jobs are, and what the old jobs go away, and who's helped and who's hurt by this, but I know that some of the fundamental things, money, for in the United States, from an unemployment standpoint, we are building massive amounts of money is coming into the United States on capital expenditures, which is building manufacturing, which is creating jobs. So there'll be different jobs. There'll be the jobs we had 40 years ago, maybe. I don't know. But that's the plan. Maybe that plan fails, but that's the plan, right? That's what these tariffs are about. They're not to collect revenue. Obviously, it's nice that you collect revenue. And we had a Supreme Court ruling on these tariffs today, or at least a portion of them. It's about repatriating money back into the United States to create jobs. So I don't know. Maybe we're going to lose some jobs from AI, and we're going to gain some other jobs. We'll see what happens. But that's going to be an important part of the equation. There's no doubt. I don't know. Elon Musk is talking about a world that I don't understand and that I don't believe, and it makes no sense to me. He thinks, he was talking about 10 years from now, but he's one for a little hyperbole. But even if it's 20 or 30 years from now, he's talking about every single person owns their own robot. Their robot does 100% of the work. The government gives them all the money they need, and nobody ever works again. So I don't think that's the future. That future makes no sense to me at all. Sarmon Gaming saying Biden's 9% inflation with record high consumer goods and gas prices was bad, or whoever was president during that time. I mean, 2022 was our nightmare. And the problem is you can't undo what's been done. Yes, we were at CPI was at 9.1% in February of 2022. That was catastrophic. By the way, the Fed didn't do anything about it. Even there were 10 months into inflation skyrocketing, the worst inflation we've had in 40 or 50 years. And they had yet to raise rates. They were saying, oh, it's all transitory. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. So we'll see if they get it right this time.
Do you think that if the interest rates were lower right now, it would be different?
I think that it's a gigantic problem that interest rates are not significantly lower right now, because at some point we may need tools in our tool belt to offset. Inflation's been the boogeyman, but I'm going to see if I have this chart up. Inflation normalized almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And every single monthly reading since then has been between 2% and 3%. Now, while the Fed's target rate is 2% inflation, our historical average is more like 3.5%. So we have been under the average inflation for years now. The problem is we still have very high interest rates. It's an affordability issue. And if and when they keep saying, well, we're worried about inflation. We're worried about inflation. Well, if you don't raise rates when inflation goes down, which it did for the last 3 years, what are you going to do when inflation does come back, right? When it's not the boogeyman anymore. Clearly, inflation is not the problem right now, right? There's just not. We got PCE today and people want to panic about it. CPI was at a 5-year low last week. Inflation has normalized. It's been gone for a long time. Now they just, took away some of the tariff power. That's going to potentially short-term lower prices, although the president has put out a plan to make tariffs even higher than they were without those. So something in the middle, reasonable, hopefully will happen.
He's just going to do another executive order.
There's,
there's like this one. How about this one?
There's a lot of different levers to pull. Some of them are temporary, some of them are permanent, and most of the tariffs. We'll just talk about this for a minute because it was the big news of the day. I must have an article on here somewhere. Somebody tell me. Okay. Explaining President Trump's reaction to the Supreme Court tariffs ban. More tariffs? ? So this was from the White House. Effective immediately, all national security tariffs, Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs remain in place and in full force and effect. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already. Then it says show more already. So the 232 tariffs, the 301 tariffs, the national security tariffs, none of those are going away. And I can tell you, I do a lot of work with a cabinet company here locally, and we already know the tariffs are not going away on cabinets. So, we were keeping our fingers crossed that, maybe that Supreme Court ruling would get rid of those tariffs, but it's not going to. It will get rid of some tariffs, but there's a lot of different tariffs under a lot of different sections and chapters of federal law, and a lot of them are going to stay in place. Some of them are going to go away. So that's kind of what's going on. This is, more political positioning, and I don't know what's going to come of this. I certainly don't want tariffs to spiral out of control. I don't want them to go away either. I don't want to lose, the power to reasonably negotiate. But I don't think that's what the Supreme Court did. And the other thing was, not to get into the minutia, but I'll just say there's one more thing if I can find it. Otherwise, I'll just summarize it if I can't find the exact spot. So this is from Donald J. Trump. So I'm just going to summarize it because it's in here somewhere. You can read this if you want. The president has the power to do an embargo on any country. In other words, stop all trade 100%. So it's a very strange line to draw to say you could actually ban trade altogether from this country, but you can't set any trade policy, tariff policies with this country. It's a bit of a contradiction. I mean, you know, if you really wanted to do something that shakes things up, you could say, all right, the companies that are, or the countries that are not trading fairly, we're just going to do an embargo. No more trading with them. It's against the law. So that power is in the executive branch. So there's a lot of inconsistencies here. This whole thing doesn't make sense. The Congress has the power of the purse, they say. Initially, tariffs were something that Congress dealt with back in the 1800s, but it's been 100 years since the Congress had anything to do with tariffs. And if you're honest with yourself, if we had to negotiate with foreign countries and we had to wait for an act of Congress to get a deal done, is there even a 1% chance that would ever happen? Right? Negotiations don't happen at the pace of Congress. And that's why they've actually delegated most of the tariff authority to the executive branch. So the Supreme Court is saying, in this one piece here, you've gone too far.
Do you think that you could just change the verbiage and don't call it a tariff?
I think there's going to be games like that they play. That's what I'm saying. There's other levers they can pull to try to accomplish the same thing.
It's not a tariff.
Although I firmly agree with the court's holding today, the decision might not substantially constrain a president's ability to order tariffs going forward. That is because numerous other federal statutes authorize the president to impose tariffs and might justify more, if not all, of the tariffs issued in this case. Those statutes include, for example, the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, Section 232, the Trade Act of 1974, Section 122, Section 201, and Section 301, and the Tariff Act of 1930, Section 338. So there have been a lot of times, and here's what I really think. Congress does need to meet again and pass a law. We need to get more specific because... Well, and I know
it's gonna happen.
No, I understand. That's the problem. That's the catch-22. It's like you would love, right? We're supposed to have 3 branches of government that keep things in check. Now, here's a great example. The Supreme Court was not partisan on this. They went against the Supreme Court is majority Republicans, and they went against the Republican president. So that is a check and balance system that worked today, whether you agree with the decision or you disagree with the decision. That's what's supposed to happen. The problem with Congress is they just don't do anything ever. So you can't be a check or a balance if you do nothing. So we need to hold them more accountable to do their job. Write a law, define exactly what the president can and can't do in regards to this.
Tom, do you know if we're in a partial government shutdown because of Operation Thingamajigger Homeland Security thing?
I don't think that it's considered a partial shutdown. I think we were, for like 2 days, we were in a partial shutdown. But we're in a state of limbo as we speak. Gambit Beer retaliatory embargo then. And I'm not suggesting that because that would make matters even worse. I'm just saying it's an inconsistency in, the rights and duties and powers of the executive branch that, I can't charge you a tariff, but I can tell you can't even trade with us at all.
Well, that's gamut. That's actually, it's so weird that judges on the Supreme Court align with political party. That's not normal. They didn't this time. They
Right.
did not align
This was
with
an
political party.
this was an unusual. There's nothing more disappointing than us. You know, it used to be the court for most of my life. The court's been 5-4 in one direction or the other. And
Oh, yeah.
and on any important issue, you could put it in the bank. The outcome was going to be 5-4 in whichever party had the majority in the Supreme Court. In this instance today, Republicans have a 6-3 majority, but the Republican president lost this court case with the Supreme Court 6-3, which means three of the judges appointed to the Supreme Court by Republican candidates voted against Donald Trump on this decision.
Gamut beer, I would argue that statement, by the way. Most countries' judges are political neutral. I believe most judges are always politically in nature.
I don't know how you avoid it, and I would be interested. If everybody from other countries, do you guys experience that? I know the politics over here has gotten to a toxic place that I've never seen in my lifetime. Is everything's partisan. You can't have a conversation about what color the sky is without the answer being Donald Trump is evil. So that's where we are over here, and yes, our judges at the federal and state level are mind-bogglingly partisan. You get rulings. We have a circuit, the Ninth Circuit. Every single case that's been sent from the Ninth Circuit to the Supreme Court has been overturned. All of them. They should not exist. That is just a partisan bunch of hacks that aren't doing their job. You can't be for everything. If you've reached the level to where you're a federal circuit court judge and the Supreme Court disagrees with every single thing that comes from you. So we do experience partisanship at a level of judge, and even in the Supreme Court. I'm encouraged that this was not straight down political lines. Every time we get a 9-0, I'm so happy, because it's like usually I think most things should be 9-0. They're trying to interpret the law. We've been around for 200, this is our 250th anniversary. We've hashed out most of these laws. So when something gets to the Supreme Court, typical business as usual type stuff, I think they should mostly agree on, right? They're all supposed to be the best judges in the land. So when they fall down party lines on an issue, it is disturbing. When it's 9-0, it's encouraging. When it's 6-3 and your party is voting against you, that's actually something that's encouraging, I think. And rare, unbelievably rare over here. Do you think the Clarity Act will move the market? That's a good question. Let me find something quickly here. And then, not going to pronounce this name, but a member says you guys should do a tier list of Bitcoin miners.
Too late.
I mean,
it's too late. Oh, you can do it, yeah.
I can do one for the next stream and tell you what I think is what, and I think we got to start differentiating. We now have pure plays, hybrids, and now we actually have pure plays on the other side that aren't even Bitcoin miners at all anymore. We still talk about them, but they're actually pure play AI.
Tom, I'm sneaking out. I'll see you guys. I'll see you in a little bit.
Okay, you got it.
I'll see you guys.
Thanks, George. Okay, so Ripple's Brad Garlinghouse, that's the CEO of Ripple, says Clarity Bill has a 90% chance of passing by April. So I don't know where he comes up with that number, but that I do think, somebody asked in the comments, do you think that will move the market? I think this is one of the single biggest things holding the market back right now. Everybody expected this would already be passed. It's gotten pushed out, but there is, if I can find the article, there is good news on this. Here we go. Inside the meeting, White House favors some stablecoin rewards, tells bank it's time to move. So the Clarity Act is being held up. There's a lot of little things. Those are all going to get hashed out. There's a lot of very simple fixes that they're disagreeing on that are more negotiating points. What is holding this up is one thing, which is stable coins having yields. Because what the banks are saying, and they're not saying it quietly, if stable coins can have yields and act like money markets, we're screwed. Period. People are going to stop depositing money in the banks based on our lending formulas. If we don't have deposits, we can't lend money, which means people can't buy cars, they can't buy houses. It's the end of civilization as we know it. That's essentially the argument from the banking side of the world. We have finally gotten, this is the first bit of movement I've seen on this at all. Sources familiar with the talks on stablecoin yields say the White House urged bankers to get on board with a deal that lets the market structure bill advance. And here's some of the quick bullet points. The White House negotiators at the latest meeting urged bankers to allow for limited stablecoin rewards that won't threaten their deposit business, according to sources familiar with the talks. The banking representatives at Thursday's meeting were said to have actively worked on language to that end, though a final draft will still have to be circulating and weighed by the banks. This is the middle ground that needs to occur, because the banks aren't wrong. If there's a mass exodus from the banks into stablecoins because you can go get the same amount or potentially more money, it's not FDIC insured and there's other factors, but guess what? Most people couldn't care any less. If they can get more money here, it's a systemic threat. And so this is the solution, is to create some kind of middle ground where you can't say you guys can't do anything, but they can say you can't threaten, you can't compete with our business, because bank deposits, without bank deposits, essentially what we're talking about is a run on the bank, and society doesn't function properly. So, I don't know if there's a segue over the next 50 years to get from, fiat currency and our banking system all the way into a cryptocurrency universe, but you got to remember, there's trillions, multi-trillions of dollars of money that are lent to buy houses and cars and on credit cards, and none of that can happen if there's no deposits in the bank. So they're not wrong. They just need to find middle ground. It looks like this is the first legit thing I've seen that shows they're looking for that middle ground. And when they get it, and Brad Garlinghouse of XRP is saying, he's saying 90% chance by April. I think that's a home run. If that can be done by April, I think that lines up with a time where we're probably chopping sideways on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency anyway as it consolidates. That's my train of thought. But So maybe this will all line up to what George is talking about, which is rough going the first half of the year, but then starting to hit our stride in the second half of the year. Pogo said, USA politics is insane, but so much more entertaining than in Canada. Trump is totally mad, but never boring. Well, it's not boring over here. I bet you most people here would root for a little boring. And I see somebody saying, Mara completed a French deal and no one cared. I'm sure Fred is going to get compensation while shareholders get the stick. So I don't think the Clarity Act is priced in at all. And I think a lot of the tailwinds, a lot of the headwinds right now are going to turn into tailwinds. The market is still, if you go look, here's a couple of things I'll end on. Here's the fear and greed index. Today, 7. Extreme fear. We did get down to 5 last week. That ties the worst extreme fear in the history of the fear and greed index for cryptocurrency. We're at 7 right now. So to me, this is what I'm talking about. When you see us at the most historically oversold we've ever been in on the RSI, the most historically fearful we are on the fear and greed index, massively high levels of volume on a day where the Bitcoin crashes, massively high volume on a day where Bitcoin has one of the big recoveries it's ever had. All of those things, to me, feel like components of a bottom. And a bottom maybe doesn't happen in a single moment, but I do think we're leveling out. I think the best, most realistic case scenario is we chop around sideways for a little while before we get enough momentum to get the next leg up, and there'll be some catalyst like the Clarity Act or, a rate cut or all of the above that will start to kick in, and people will, fear turns into FOMO faster than people realize, especially in cryptocurrency. So I remain optimistic. Having said that, we're at just under $68,000 for Bitcoin right now, which is honestly, it's not good. I mean, we were in the 120,000s 4 months ago. So, this has been a tough run, but I think that, for me, I took the opportunity to buy some Bitdeer yesterday. And, not financial advice. It's a high risk. It's the worst performing Bitcoin mining stock in the last 15 months. But I think it's oversold. So that's my opinion. Today was pretty good for Bitcoin and right across the board for the Bitcoin miner, high performance computing, / data center / power companies. So we'll talk about ranking these or maybe putting them in categories next time. And for the members, I'll see you guys on Tuesday, and maybe we'll talk about some of that there as well. Let's look at the final poll. I don't even know what it was. Are you going to buy some of the AI, high performance computing, or Bitcoin stocks next week? 41% said yes. 38% said no. 11% waiting for another dip, then yes. And 11% more say they're waiting for another big drop, not just a dip. So these are the other things. With a lot of these split polls where everybody's all over the place are also very good signs that, that lack of agreement happens, at or near bottoms. So nobody knows until we get there, but I'm encouraged. So hang in there. I hope everybody had a good week. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. Thank you guys so much for joining us. You can smash the like button on the way out if you haven't. It does help out the channel a lot, and it's much appreciated. We will be here. Members, we'll see you guys Tuesday after the market closes. And for everybody else, we're here every Friday after the market closes. Thank you so much for joining.